Thank you, Constable Walker. Are we all, or you let me know when you're set to go? Okay. Good afternoon. I'd like to start by acknowledging that we are located on the traditional territories of the Tsimith, Matsqui, and Lakamo First Peoples. I'm Henry Braun. I'm the mayor of the city of Abbotsford. Throughout the day, water levels have continued to abate, and we were able to rescind the evacuation order for Huntington Village and the area west of Sumas Way between the U.S. border and Lonzo Avenue, which is just to the north of Highway 1, which includes most of Riverside Road. We know this is a significant commercial area, and we are pleased for the businesses located along that corridor that will be able to begin the process of resuming their operations over the coming days. The Huntington U.S. border crossing does remain closed at this time. The floodwaters from the Nooksack River continue to flow northeasterly across Sumas Prairie, and the water levels there continue to rise toward the east. They're dropping in the west, but rising in the east. The Barrowtown pump station is fully operational at high speed. Approximately 500,000 gallons per minute go through that pumping station. The floodgates have not opened at this time, and we can open those once the river level, the Fraser River level drops below the Sumas River level, and currently that's not possible yet. So we're hoping that over the next 24 to 36 hours that we will see that decrease in the Fraser River. I would again like to acknowledge the approximately 300 volunteers who came out last night and supported at the Barrowtown pump station. It's just, I saw the videos and it's just unbelievable what was happening there. So thank you to whoever you are. As you know, we experienced a fire at the Fraser Way RV earlier today on North Parallel Road. That fire is now under control and the air quality impacts have been reduced. And the Fire Chief Lee will be able to provide additional details on this. I do want to note that many people reached out to us with suggestions on how to fight this fire. I would like to state that our first responders exhausted every avenue open to them to addressing that fire. They have been working around the clock, making critical decisions based on their expertise and the expertise of our partner organizations to keep our community safe during this emergency. Our crews are still actively looking for the water main break on Sumas Prairie, and we will continue to update you on this situation as information becomes available. And you can appreciate how difficult this is with 4 or 5 feet of water on top of the ground. As I mentioned this morning, I am in continuous contact with government leaders and appreciate their efforts for full support as we continue to address this emergency and our recovery to come. The safety of our Abbotsford residents remains everyone's priority, and the city is and will continue to work closely with our neighbors, other levels of government, and the First Nations to address the ongoing and changing needs of our community. The local state of emergency continues to evolve, and we will keep everyone updated as we can. I will now turn the conference over to Chief Darren Lee from Abbotsford Fire Rescue Services for his update, followed by Chief Constable Mike Sear.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for being here. Just overview. We're currently in unified command on the we're referring to the Chilliwack side of the incident. So we have one of our assistant fire chiefs working over there, supporting work around the Barrowtown lift station and other projects. And I'll let Chief Sear speak to sort of more the search and rescue efforts that are going on right now. On the west side, we're in unified command, and as the mayor mentioned, we had a fairly significant fire this morning. At the RV dealership, there's approximately 200 RVs that were involved in an incident, and it was sort of it was definitely a wind-driven incident, and the column of smoke was definitely noticeable in the Sumas Mountain area. So as soon as we're able to, we put out a air quality advisory just to have folks keep their windows and doors closed as much as possible to try and keep the toxic smoke and the particulate out of their homes. We responded there with, I believe it was 9 apparatus and about 45 firefighters. And if folks at home watching, or if you saw, there's large power transmission lines there. So we called BC Hydro in right away. There's several 500 kilovolt lines, and there's a 250 kilovolt line there. So it's a pretty significant hazard. One of the tough things was we had access to the site with the water rescinding, which was great, but with the amount of water in the ditches and stuff like that, it was really challenging. So the crews were really creative, used ladder trucks to actually get across the ditch and then stretch hose lines in after they got the fire knocked down with the ladder trucks a bit. So amazing work. They worked super hard, really creative. We ended up calling mutual aid from Township of Langley and the City Mission, and we're definitely grateful for them for that support. And just thought I should mention it again. So the air quality advisory was lifted, and right now they're just cleaning up hotspots. That property is actually on Sumas First Nations. So we've turned the fire investigation over to the RCMP and the BC Office of the Fire Commissioner. They'll be taking the site from here on out. So thank you.
Good afternoon, and just to start, congratulations, Chief Lee, to you and your team. That was one heck of a fire, as you saw from the pictures, and I'm glad everyone was safe. We continue to be very engaged with evacuations in Sumas Prairie. Since this morning, another 40 people have been evacuated from the area. We've had approximately 40 people that have chosen not to leave that area, which is concerning. We're still asking anyone in the Sumas Prairie to leave, to follow the evacuation order. I know some people, you've heard a couple times, have seen that water is receding in certain areas. But I can tell you that this is still a dynamic situation. We're still monitoring the river levels very closely. We know that this is not over, and this can change very quickly. As an example, Mayor Braun and I were out earlier today assessing some of the damage, and even just some of the roads that we were on literally 2 hours ago, we've now been advised now have water back over those roads. So this is why we're asking people to leave when you're being requested to do so or asked to do so under the order. Moving forward, we're going to continue to move forward with our evacuations throughout the night. Search and rescue in support of everyone else has just done an outstanding job. I was out there again watching them today, just truly impressive. Abbotsford Police Department members, just working excessive hours, I can tell you, and it just engaged in so many different areas, as well as fire, the city staff, engineering. It is just amazing to see all that happening. As of today, at 3 p.m., we've only had 3 calls left on our board of people still being required to be evacuated out of the area, so that is good news. To date, we still have no people unaccounted for. We had no calls of that, but of course, we're going to continue to assess the damage. As we start to see the roads receding, the flooding, we are seeing damage on those roads and significant damage. Some vehicles, Mayor Braun and I again saw vehicles driving on certain roads that just had recently had the water recede. Those roads are not safe yet. They've not been cleared by engineers. They're unstable, and we need to ensure that we do that prior to allowing traffic. We're also working very closely with our agricultural ministry to try to get support to all the farms that are in the area. Again, very challenging with the size of trucks and the damage to roads that we're assessing, but we also know that's critical to keeping livestock safe and alive, and the well-being of people in those areas. So with that, I will turn it back to Mayor Braun.
Thank you, Chief. And just following up on what you said, just because a road is dry doesn't mean it's safe. And so we ask people, wait for our assessments. We've got a number of bridges. I think there's 30 bridges in Sumas Prairie. Our engineers have to look at that before we send heavy loaded trucks over there. I do not want to lose anybody because a bridge collapsed. Or the side of the shoulder washed away, because those deep ditches are still full of water. There is 20 feet of water in some of those ditches. Anyways, with that, questions for any of us?
When can Abbotsford expect the Canadian Armed Forces to arrive, and what is arriving in terms of men and material?
I'm not aware of what, when, or what is going to happen there. While I was listening and talking, actually, my phone's been ringing. There's a couple of ministers that are after me, so I may have some of that information, but I don't have it now.
Mayor Braun, can you give us some information? The public safety minister said that they would about that?
Yes, that is true. That was our call. I thought I made that clear yesterday, that the city made that decision. And the reason we made that decision is we have 162,000 people living in Abbotsford. We were dealing with 300 people on Sumas Prairie, and we knew where those properties were, and we were going house to house, boats or vehicles, and I did not want to, as the mayor, panic our city when we knew already that where these people were. They already know. They don't need an alert to tell them there's 5 feet of water outside their house. So for that reason, we chose not to do that, and I think that was the right decision. And if I had to do it over again, I would do it over again.
The Abbotsford police have been telling, warning people about the toxicity of the water. And I'm wondering if there's, if you could elaborate on that a little bit more, as far as areas of concern and if there's any long-term potential effects environmentally.
I didn't hear the first part of the question.
Just elaborate a little bit more on the toxicity of the water. There's been,
Oh.
police have been
Toxicity of the water, okay, yeah. Well, we don't actually know that, but we know that there are many manure, or there's 20,000 head of cattle on that prairie, and all those farms have manure pits. With 5 feet of water, there's been saturation of that coming back out. We don't actually know that yet, but I can assure you that that water, it may be, well, there's going to be there's issues there with.
Do you know how significant of a problem it was after the 1990 flood?
No, I was nowhere near City Hall. I was busy building railroads and transit systems at that time. But I mean, I was reading it. I've lived here for 68 years, but I don't recall that was what happened after that. But we are certainly going to be monitoring and looking at that as well. And quite frankly, to be totally candid with you, there's going to be dead livestock and dead chickens and some other things that are. We know that a lot of the cows came out. The heroic efforts of our farmers was unbelievable. I wish you could see what I saw. But many of those calves that are like this, with 4 or 5 feet of water, those calves drowned. They couldn't get them out. So that's sad. But so there's a recovery coming. We are still focused singularly on getting on people and keeping them safe, but the recovery is just around the corner.
Can you touch base on, we've been hearing reports of people now getting a little concerned about grocery store shelves and stuff like that. Can you set the record straight that, maybe don't hoard, should there be a problem?
Yes, I would like to encourage everyone. My understanding is that the supply chain, at least for our city, that's not an issue. And I caused maybe some of this myself when I said, or maybe I implied, I can't remember exactly what I said, but that 50% of the chickens, dairy products, eggs come from this city. That's true. But this is only one portion, maybe a quarter portion of our city. We have many other farms that are in other locations, including Matsqui Prairie, that are supplying the province with those commodities. So and so far, I haven't heard of shortages. I haven't been in a store. I've been basically here for 20 hours a day. But I have watched some portions of the morning news where I could see empty grocery shelves. But my understanding is that at least the larger grocery stores don't appear to have a supply chain problem. But I will leave that for them.
But also, too, there were reports, too, of some of these farmers that still have to milk their cattle and stuff, like they can't even process it, they have to dump it. And we've seen that before.
Yeah, and that is dependent on getting access to their farms. So that's gonna have a huge impact if we can't get them access. But that is dependent on how quickly the waters are going to recede. There's still 4 or 5 feet of water out there, and we can't see what damage has been done underneath. That is muddy water. If it's only a foot deep on the highway, you can see the yellow painted line, but beyond that, you cannot see 6 inches.
To that point, have you heard anything from the province about when highways and routes in and out might reopen? Does that depend on what happens with the weather in the coming days? What should we people expect?
I think that is dependent primarily on the water reducing, and then they have to do their assessment. That is their jurisdiction. Those overpasses and the off and on ramps will have to be inspected to make sure that when you get 80,000 vehicles going back on there, that there's not all sorts of other problems. You know, I've seen what Highway 11 looks like. That is a huge, that looks like a ski jump out there, the upheaval that happened to Highway 11 on Matsqui Prairie. But yeah, there's lots of work ahead of us. I don't want to speculate, because if I say it's days and it's weeks, or I say it's weeks and it's a month, people are going to criticize me. So I will leave that up to the province.
A lot of it has to do with the saturation level. It couldn't have
Totally.
happened in a worse time, because now this is monsoon weather, so
Yep.
if that saturation level stays the status quo, you're talking a long period of time.
Yeah. And we're fortunate that we're going to have, you know, relatively rainless days for 3 or 4. You know, we're going to get a little bit tomorrow, but nothing like what we've had. And that's going to all contribute to the lowering of the Fraser, I hope. And we'll know more about that in the next 12 to 24 hours. And we were taking it, sometimes hour by hour.
Mayor Braun, there's been reports about thousands of animals dying. Can you talk about some of the rescue efforts that are happening in Sumas Prairie? What does that look like? What kind of support is out there?
Well, farmers are very industrious when it comes to solving solutions. And what I saw yesterday, having boats and hovercraft out there, lassoing the cattle one at a time and bringing them out by boats, and having those boats at a 45-degree angle, because a cow weighs 1,200 pounds, so it's a little more than a normal skier. But they were literally dragging those animals out of 5-foot deep water onto Highway 1 and wherever there was bare land, and they're transporting them now to higher ground so that they can, they can't go back to their barns until that water comes down, and that's not going to happen overnight. So, but I've only seen glimpses. I don't know what's going on in the rest of the prairie, but I hear lots of good stories about coming together as a community, especially the farming community, but the rest of the community as well. They want to help the farmers. We are inundated with calls. How can we help? How can we help? This is a very generous and giving community, and they're coming together like I've never seen before.
Follow up on that, is there any update on how people can help besides the decks? People are bringing them meat there that they're not accepting.
Well, we have a number here, but I don't know what it is. But our staff can produce that for you. But I think we're fielding about 2,000 calls per hour.
What degree of certainty, you guys say that there's no one who's unaccounted for, but I'm curious as to what degree of certainty you guys can say that with, and about the process for doing that head count.
Who wants to take that one?
Sorry, I missed the.
How certain are we that there's no?
There's no one missing right now? Well, certainly we're going to have to do an assessment, but like I said, I mean, it's been 3 days. We've had no reports of anybody who's not been accounted for, people calling in missing persons and things like that. Again, I'm asking the public that if you have relatives that live in any of those evacuated areas or where orders are, to please reach out to them and call them. Just that would help us to ensure that we're checking in on people. There is, over time, I mean, as the water recedes, we'll have a better opportunity to assess, some of the damage and also to see if anything had happened. But to this point, we have no reason to believe that there is anyone unaccounted for.
As far as people that are stranded in areas that are cut off, do you have an idea of how long people are living and when they expect to find their way to their home city?
Well, I mean, I think we're starting to see that, I know the province today is looking at different options to try to, give access to routes, but we don't have any timelines. I think for the most part, people that were, trapped in some of the islands that we saw in Abbotsford, we've been able to get them out of those locations, i.e. the Whatcom area, where there was areas where people just we're stranded on around a pool of water. But for the most part here, that's been resourced. So really now our biggest challenge is going to be, as was discussed earlier, is getting this highway open. That is going to be a challenge. We have engineering issues and all that kind of stuff, and also trying to find other access routes that we can utilize. And we're trying to do that as well with our our agricultural community too, to try to support them. But again, we're also very mindful. This is still dynamic and it changes quickly, and we have a lot of issues with our roads that we're seeing. So.
Can you give me an approximate number of how many people are stranded?
I don't have that right now, sorry.
Lisa, what is your biggest fear or worry in the next 24, 48, 72 hours? What's the biggest worry?
Well, I mean, I think for all of us, we know, has this been discussed? I mean, our waters are still high, especially in eastern, Abbotsford. So we are very closely, we're there all the time monitoring where those levels are, where the Sumas River is, where it flows into the Nooksack, what the levels of the Fraser are, where we can allow water to be released. So our biggest fear is that we have, our dams and our rivers overflow. But again, right now, the information we have is that we're holding stable. But, we have been up and down the last 24 hours, thinking that we got this behind us, and then only to find out that, we're still, seeing some minor increases. So that's our biggest fear. And then, making sure that we can support our community. I'm comfortable now that most of our evacuation orders have been, enforced, and we've got the people in place. So.
Can I ask the mayor here, I just got one question on the fact that we had the search and rescue from North Shore. They had the infrared goggles. It's quite amazing that they're the only people, from what I gather, in this province that has the ability to do that, fly at night with the infrared, if I'm not mistaken on that.
No, I'm not aware of that. I believe you, but I have no knowledge of that.
Okay, yeah, because they were out all night last night.
Yeah, there was a lot of people. I think we had 11 boats out last night or something like that. So I'm aware of that.
Yeah,
So
I'm talking about the helicopters, because that's
Yep.
just, just being able to have that
Yep.
ability.
yeah, the province and the federal government are providing what we need when we need it so far. So I appreciate that. And
You mentioned the 1990 flood earlier. Your history of Abbotsford, your knowledge of Abbotsford's history, how does this compare to the 1990 flood or other incidents, both in terms of the natural impact and the human response? How do you compare this?
I think if you would ask anyone who's been here 40 or 50 years, I've been here 68 years, they say they will tell you this is unprecedented. This is nothing like 1990, and I hope I never see it again. But I need to go to another media event, so I appreciate you all coming out. We will continue to give you updates as they come in, and I just appreciate you joining us today. Thank you.